So books have saved my life many times, more than I care to talk about, I guess. Because they change perceptions, well, depending on which books you're reading. So I would always be mindful when something shit was happening, whether it was a health challenge or just something in life, that I would go to a bookstore and I would look for titles that may be suggestive of a shift in perspective regarding that situation. So one example would be I quit smoking using the Alan Carr method, and that was easy. It was really easy. Everybody said how difficult quitting smoking was, but once you've read that book, and if you take it in and you sort of digest it properly, it shifts the emphasis from smoking being an enjoyment to, why am I doing this? I've had health problems over the years, like chronic pain since I was 3, and I managed to get a proper diagnosis. I'd been in and out of hospital like for many, many years. I only found out what it was when Isaac was born, and that was 14 years ago. So I'd lived with all this pain, been into hospital, various investigations, and they never knew what it was. And I read a book once, and it was called A Headache in the Pelvis, and realised that it was to do with the muscular structure of my pelvis and back. And so just having that knowledge, that illness has dominated my life. It stopped me working, it stopped me schooling, and having the knowledge of what it was took the fear out of it, took the pain out of it, because once I knew what it was, I knew how to handle it. So since I could read, I think I've probably read books about people overcoming adversity, whether that's running ultra marathons. I find runners fascinating. Whether it's people climbing mountains, I'm terrified of heights, but I'm fascinated by climbers. It's the endurance. It's people who put themselves to the tests for the positive, because it's all about mental strength. I had each of my pregnancies, I had home births with no pain relief because I wanted to be present. And each one was the most beautiful experience. My favourite part of being pregnant was giving birth. It's empowering to learn that there are different ways of thinking about things is so empowering. Because we're stuck in our heads. We live in our heads. And we think our thoughts are like the gospel, that they're real. They're not real. A shift in perspective can change your life. And it's not just being positive. It's not just making a positive situation from a bad experience. It's got to be something deeper than that. It's not going, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, repeatedly. It's not feel it, fake it till you make it. It's more about that shift coming and then staying with you, because it has made such an impact in your life. You can't not think that way anymore. And that's what the coaching does. It makes those little shifts. And so life grows exponentially, because you're just one shift away from greatness. I did a coaching session with my daughter. She asked me to. She was 9. Well, she is 9. And she asked me, Mummy, can I have a coaching session? So we booked her in. And we were talking about like friendships and stuff like that. But it turned out that Delilah puts everybody before herself. And so her thoughts and her emotions don't matter to her. She thinks of other people. And so we looked at why she feels like she's not worthy of being put first. And we didn't find an answer to that, but what we did do was do some internal work, which was just meditative. I just took her into the space where she could find her own magnificence, and that sounds awfully grandiose, and really is just taking you inside yourself to the stillness. It's a meditative process because you're blocking the thought patterns, you're halting them, you're breathing, you're becoming centered and grounded. And from that place, you can think a lot clearer. You can think a lot more lovingly about yourself. And so Delilah, from that space, I said to her, how do you feel now? And she said, I love me. And I tried to do mirror work with Delilah when she was about 3, thinking, well, that'll be easy for a kid to look in the mirror and say, I love you, to themselves in order to build up really good self-esteem. But she couldn't do it. She could never do it. And so for her to say, I love me, was massive. Like really, really massive. And something shifted in her from that one session that made her put in place boundaries. When she was going to say, no, you do it, she would then stop herself and say, no, I'm going to do it. You know, she took back her power. And it was so nice to see, because that's life-changing for anybody. But for a 9-year-old with the rest of their lives ahead of them, it's being able to see her own magnificence is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It makes my heart warm just thinking about it. And that will empower her decisions through her life. And we'll build on that slowly. Whenever she comes to me and says, Mummy, I want coaching again, then in a heartbeat, I will do it. And we'll have all these little shifts happening, because they happen to me all the time, because I'm being coached. And it's all these little shifts together create a more whole person. She said I use my hands a lot when I talk, I gesture a lot. And what are we on this planet for if it's not to find our true nature, not to engage with our true nature, not to feel our magnificence? The world would be such a better place if we could all just touch on that, because there's such truth in it, and it removes the judgment, and it removes the old habit patterns. And so life is just a series of shifting perspectives. If you can be open-minded enough, and if you want to make your life better, it's certainly made my life better, and it's made my daughter's life better, and everyone I've coached so far, it's made their life a bit better, you know? And that's from 1 or 2 sessions. But coaching is about packages. It's about maintaining regular practice. It's about touching base and regularly recognizing these thought patterns that trip you up along the way. Because it's really easy to fall back into the thinking. But it's often quite hard to rein yourself back in, because once that momentum starts, it's really hard to be objective. And that's why coaching is so helpful, because it guides the person to be looking at their behaviours in a more objective way. Okay, take care, lots of love.